So apparently, Dane Calloway is beefing with Tariq Nasheed. And Tariq Nasheed paid him dust except for telling people that he didn't want to collaborate with him. So Dane Calloway must have gotten his feelings. So he took to Twitter earlier this month to express how if Tariq Nasheed does a movie and documentary on Bill Cosby and he chooses to use his work, he will certainly sue him and flag that documentary and or movie, because he's not playing with him, because he said that he's been plagiarizing his work. Now, Tariq Nasheed decided, okay, since you have your name in my mouth, I'm going to spoof you. I'm not going to say your name. I'm going to call you Harriet, because I just think that you're a weirdo and you're a liar and you're a fraud. And you're basically saying that our black icons don't exist, such as Harriet Tubman and Fredrick Douglass. And it's really disrespectful. And I'm going to say something. I totally agree with Tariq Nasheed, because I've been saying it for a long time that this Dane Calloway person, is very dangerous, particularly to trying to reimagine and rewrite Black history in America to fit the narrative of indigenous history. We need to talk about him. Let's get into it, shall we? Hey, good morning, everyone. So I want to talk about this Dane Calloway versus Tariq Nasheed beef, which really, if you really want to be precise about it, it's really Dane Calloway beefing with Tariq. Tariq isn't beefing with Dane. Tariq is not threatened by Dane. He is not intimidated. He's been doing this way before Dane even jumped on YouTube, which was around about 2014. Now, I came across Dane Calloway around about, I would say, 2018, okay? And I will say this, when it comes to indigenous history pertaining to Black people having that as our heritage, I agree with that. Many Black Americans have not just heritage, we're not just of African descent, but we're also of Native American, indigenous American descent. We have grandmothers or great-grandmothers who were half Native American, some even Native American. These are facts. But what you cannot do is just say you're all of those things, but you're not a descendant of people who were kidnapped from Africa. Because what that does is it basically negates who you are as a person. And more so, you can't claim being a Black person. If you're saying that you're not Black, you can't claim reparations. You can't do it. You can't get any benefits being a Black person. You have to remember that. So when you say, well, I'm not Black, my ancestors didn't come from Africa. Okay, fine. You can't claim slavery. You can't claim that. Because even though there were indigenous people that did get caught up into slavery, you have to prove that. And that's a whole lot of work. And I know this is going to be a controversial topic, but you got to prove it. Okay? Which is why in the end, even though a lot of people don't really want to claim that part of them being African, of the African descent, in the end, it's the only thing that you're able to claim because there's more tangible proof with it. I'm not saying that you can't claim being Native American. What I'm saying is it's hard to claim that all Native Americans practically, well, let me rephrase it. It's hard to claim that most Black people that were enslaved in America were Native Americans. You have to prove it. You're going to have to prove it. especially if you're saying that you didn't come from from Africa at all. Now, yes, I am a little bit jumpy and stuff because I have insomnia, but I know what I'm talking about. I've been up since 2 a.m. this morning, and I did watch the Dane Calloway documentary. I'm going to talk about that later on today. My issue with Dane Calloway is that you're saying that Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Nat Turner didn't exist, when it is proven that Frederick Douglass was the most photographed person, not black person, but person who was American of the 19th century. He was the most photographed person of that century. Okay? And that was his name, Frederick Douglass. And he comes from the DMV area, where you're from. And you're saying that your research proved that those people didn't exist. There's no way. Now, I'm going to tell you what my issue is with you, Dane, which is real personal. You said last year that the Catilda didn't exist, that the boat was fake, and that you also said that Kojo was a made-up character. My grandmother personally knew Kojo. She sat on his lap when she was a little girl in Mobile, Alabama, and he told her stories about when he was kidnapped. My family personally knew Kojo. Okay? And everything that he told them about himself is in those books that you can buy at Barnes & Nobles, that you can buy at your college's bookstore, that you can buy on Amazon.com. Okay? And he also told her that in Africa, the Dahomies, they were very, very vicious. And that even though he did get kidnapped and landed in what is known as Mobile, Alabama area, he said in the long run, he would rather deal with the racism in this country than to deal with what was going on in the village where he was living, because it was really, really, really crazy. He said he would rather deal with it. He said it was very scary. Okay? And that boat that you said, the fake stuff that it was washed up the shore, things can happen when it comes to the seas and the ocean, believe it or not. And the reason why most slave ships, you really don't find them, is because they actually destroyed a lot of them. And some of them that they didn't destroy, they reused for other means. Okay? And if you look at that Catilda, the parts of the ship, you could tell that they chopped it up and they put it out in the ocean. Okay? And yes, slavery did exist. It is not fake. It wasn't real, because I could tell you stories about my family when they were enslaved and how they got sold from Richmond, Virginia to Marion, Alabama, the hometown of Coretta Scott King. See, this is the problem I have with the pseudo stuff. You want to talk about Tariq this and Tariq that, and I don't agree with everything that Tariq says. Let's get that clear. But there's one thing about Tariq. Tariq does his research and he does his homework, and he does not lie to fit a narrative, okay? All right? Here's another thing about Tariq. Tariq would never ever say that a group of people didn't exist to fit a narrative. Okay? What you're doing is you're saying slavery didn't really happen. There wasn't a slave trade. That didn't occur. Africans were not kidnapped and came over here. All of us that was enslaved are Native Americans. Harriet Tubman didn't exist. She was an actor. She was created by, and then he has the nerve to say, the Library of Congress. That's how you know this man is not dealing with a full deck. The Library of Congress created them. They created Frederick Douglass. They created Nat Turner. Why would they create Nat Turner? Nat Turner is their worst nightmare. Why would anybody white create Nat Turner? Why would they do that? And then, by the way, there are newspaper clippings that talks about what happened, and it talks about Nathaniel Turner being hung at Jerusalem, Virginia. These are all facts. Okay? We gotta shut down this pseudo nonsense. And we gotta call out black people who don't want to claim the part of them, of their ancestors coming from the continent of Africa. We have to call out those that just want to be copper-colored blacks. And you want to erase that part because you cannot handle the fact that you have slavery in your family history. And you want to impose that pathology on all of us. And it's wrong. Okay? Now, if you want to include your Native American heritage and you want to be proud of that, that is a beautiful thing because I'm proud of mine myself. Shout out to the Comanche tribe, okay? Because my great-great-great-grandmother, who escaped slavery in Texas, basically was like, no, I'm not going to be a slave. So she ended up first with the Kiowas, and then the Comanches, and then married a Comanche man, had children, and then those children moved to Louisiana. That's how my Louisiana culture comes about and my heritage. But it all began in Texas from my father's lineage, okay? But still, I'm not going to denounce the fact that she was black and that she was enslaved and that more than likely she had heritage from centuries ago from Africa. Or maybe it probably wasn't centuries ago. It really could have been maybe 3 generations ago. Her grandmother, for all we know, could have came from Africa. Because of the fact that in those days, they was kidnapping everybody in the 18th century, left and right. Boom, 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 boom. They try to fill up them spots, on the plantation. Let's be real. But we have to be serious because we have a serious agenda, which is reparations, and we got a claim that has to be made and fulfilled. We cannot allow people like Dane Calloway and all of his team to mess it up for us. Whether you align yourself with FBA, whether you align yourself with ADOS. Yes, we know Tariq and Yvette are enemies. They don't like each other. But we got to call something out. What they did was basically one of the best things, particularly Yvette, because Yvette Carnell resurrected the reparations movement. She resurrected that. And you may not like her, but you got to give her that credit. She did that. Okay? And she may not be the most likable person, but she did that. And if you notice, Dane Calloway came at her and really was talking this pseudo nonsense because he knew that it was awakening people to really claim what happened to them and what happened to their ancestors. Okay? And how we're still suffering the effects of that. We're not suffering the effects of being Native Americans. Okay? We're not suffering from racism, economic injustice because of being Native American. We're suffering that because of being black and being descendants of slavery and having our ancestors being kidnapped from Africa. Okay? We're not suffering from that as black people. Okay? Dane is not going to tell you that, but Dane knows that. And that's my issue with Dane Calloway. And I will be talking about Dane Calloway some more. But when it comes to this, I'm going to tell you, I'm team Tariq Nasheed and Yvette Carnell. Even though Yvette's can't be both. But on this, FBA ADOS, we have to take a stand against this type of pseudo stuff. Because if we don't, they will promote Dane Calloway's work so that we don't get anything but a Juneteenth holiday. We'll never get our tangibles at all. We'll never get laws. Because they'll say, oh, you don't claim anything. You call yourself Native Americans exclusively and say that you were never enslaved and not kidnapped, but you don't have any legal standing. When they're saying that we as black people don't have legal standing, they're talking about stuff like that. They're not talking about you being black. Because yes, being black does have a legal standing, okay? Because if being black don't have a legal standing, so does being white don't have a legal standing, okay? All right? And guess where I read that at? In Black's Law Dictionary. For all you pseudo talkers out there that say black don't have no legal standing, I've read that in Black's Law Dictionary. 11th edition, boo. And with that being said, it's your girl, Miss Ann Little Cole. I'm signing off. I guess I'll probably break the internet today because this topic is hot. And a lot of you out there that's into the pseudo-ness of not claiming being African or having ancestry in Africa, and you want to call yourself copper color people, I have nothing against it. But let's be real. The fantasy history has got to go because you're in the way. And to all my supporters and all the people that's been vibing with me, I love y'all. Thank you for listening. And to all the people that's going to hate on this, I would love to hear what you have to say and read it because I know y'all going to come for me. But guess what? I don't care. Thank you. Later.